I'm Abdul. I run the Sabre travel network business out of the Middle East. And before we get started, I wanted to reflect on a couple of things. You guys can kind of hear the buzz in the air. It's been 2 years since we all got a chance to be together. I'm sure this has been said like several times, but I thought it was worth just mentioning. Um, we were all here together. I'm sure many of us here together in 2019 without any idea what was going to come for the next 2 years, right? And so, I'd like to remind myself first and then all of you, let's not take anything for granted. It's an amazing time to be here. Seeing this energy in the air has just been, it's been a breath of fresh air. And for those of you that may know a old American um, folktale of Rip Van Winkle. I don't know if anyone's heard of Rip Van Winkle, but please look that up if you get a chance. It's about a guy that, fell asleep for 20 years after, I think, drinking some Dutch whiskey or something. Woke up 20 years afterwards to a world that's changed. Now, lucky for us, the world really hasn't changed that much. We are kind of back to where we started in 2019. And I think you'll see kind of every metric that's being measured, not just with us, but with every business in the world, is a reflection of where things are in 2019. That's our benchmark, and that's what we're kind of looking to as our North Star for the time being anyway. So I'm going to go through today some survey results from Sabre. After the survey, we also have some data that backs up the results of the survey, and then we'll have Frank and Alex join us from SHS and from Jumeirah respectfully to just kind of reflect on the outcome of the survey, how they see some trends shaping in the hospitality industry, and then we'll close with a roundtable discussion. So that's kind of the setup for the day, and let's just jump right in. So the survey that we are publishing here, it had about 500 different respondents all over the world, qualitative and quantitative surveys that were given to both airlines and agencies. So that's both in-depth interviews that were done as well as quantitative surveys that were done. We're going to see the results of those today. Every industry under the sun has been impacted by COVID, but I think it's really hard. You'd be hard pressed to find someone or find an industry that's been impacted harder than the travel industry, right? That kind of goes without saying. The decision criteria to make a booking, to book a trip is very different now than what it used to be pre-pandemic. So there's a huge need for kind of a trusted travel advisor that helps navigate the changing landscape that we're working through. And so what we're finding is the impact on travelers, as we talked about here, we're finding an impact on travelers and an impact on the travel business itself. There's an increased complexity in terms of making a booking, and there's also a challenge at a macro level for finding work resources, right? It's really difficult to find labor in this market as well. And so we've consolidated, well, before I get into that, we had 12 themes that we asked both airlines and agencies, and we rank ordered those themes from 1 to 12. And we looked for areas of agreement and areas of disagreement. And for purposes of this conversation, I'll just focus on the areas of agreement because we're seeing some of those manifest today already. Two areas that had kind of high degrees of agreement were that people are going to come back, going to combine work and leisure, and Alex and Frank will talk about that in more detail, and that people are going to spend more money on travel. We're already seeing that today. So the data that we have kind of shows this concept of revenge travel is very real, and ADRs are better, the yields are better for airlines. We're finding this to be a very exciting time to be in the industry to map through this recovery. The survey kind of put 6 key trends together, and we'll start with the extreme left and go all the way around. So, returning travel volumes is real. We're going to actually go through 3 elements of the Sabre business to show how the recovery is trending over time. Support, safety, and convenience. I alluded to that in a slide a few minutes ago that just talked about the need for trusted travel advisors. Sustainability is actually gaining momentum. Experience over price, and for that, I'd just think again about revenge travel. The new face of business travel, what is it going to look like? How is that recovery going to be mapped? We'll spend a little bit of time talking about that. And then finally, just this accelerated pace of change. So those are the 6 themes that came out of the survey, and we'll go through each one of those now. So in terms of the survey results, the numbers here show that 75% of roughly 75, it's actually 73% of the survey results show that travel is expected to return to pre-pandemic levels between 2024 and 2025. And that maps in line with what we've been trending. And the actual interesting thing to look at here, I don't know what that smudge is on the right, but we actually have really interesting trending of data since the outbreak, right? So since kind of April of 2020, for the 24 months, you're seeing this upward trend. But what's interesting is what's inside that trend. So the bottom blue line are the GDS bookings. That is currently trending at about 50% of 2019 levels. Then I have passengers boarded, and those are for the Sabre, Sabre Airlines or Sabre hosted carriers. That's trending at around 80% of 2019. And then finally we have, and this is what's really exciting and why we have Frank and Alex with us today, that the hotel CRS bookings, and those are our customer reservation systems bookings, are actually trending at above pre-pandemic levels at 105%. So a very interesting time, and we do expect that the full return to be between 2024 and 2025. The fact that today travelers are considering a lot more metrics than ever before has really resulted in 2 main outcomes. The first one is that organized trips are, 81% of the respondents show that organized trips are becoming an increasingly important part of the business that travel agents are selling. And that makes a lot of sense, right? Because people really need to have a complete end-to-end itinerary that they can plan for. Given the landscape change of entry and exits from various countries, travel agencies really need to have their data in line and be able to articulate what requirements are going to be for an end-to-end trip. So, before somebody is willing to part with their money, they want to make sure that they can enjoy that trip. And then 72% of the agents responded that people will travel to more regional and domestic sectors, and that also makes sense because what's closest to you. And so the idea that long-haul travel is still a little bit tenuous given some of the geographic challenges that exist today. So as we progress through the recovery, sustainability will again become a top priority. I'd just like to focus on this last bullet point. In 2011, an APTA study came out with 20% of the people saying that green and environmental credentials of their travel provider was something that they were really keen in focusing on. And just as of 2021, that's almost tripled. There is new blood coming into the business world. Younger people are now joining the workforce, and their care-abouts are in many ways different from some of us older folks. And it's interesting to see that that's actually now becoming a decision criteria that just didn't exist 10 years ago. Revenge travel is real. We are seeing, obviously the pent-up demand to travel freely again. 86% of the survey results said, their own customers, so consumers expect to spend more or the same on travel in 2022 as compared to pre-pandemic. Again, ADRs are increasing. We are seeing more yields come for the airlines as well. So it's been a really interesting curve to monitor. And this one is interesting. So this is where are we in terms of corporate travel? As far as our data is concerned, corporate travel is lagging about 4 to 5 months from leisure. But we're seeing it come back already in today's data. And kind of what I think about this, there's 2 main themes that have happened since the onset of COVID, right? People have started to work from anywhere and work from everywhere. And so how do you build a corporate culture, for any kind of major global company when people aren't coalescing around an office? So we see travel becoming a critical need that will start bringing people together for more MICE-type meetings, more group-type settings, so that, a corporate culture can get built properly. And then also, it's a very competitive environment. So any large enterprise sale where you're looking to retain a customer or where you're looking to gain a customer is going to require face-to-face sales pitches, right? And the minute that one company goes, whether that's IT consulting or whether that's just business consulting in general, all the competitors are going to follow. And we're seeing that happen in North America already. And then I just like to end with this, right? The pace of change is accelerating, but we're keeping up. And if there's anything to say, I mean, this is now 2 years after a pandemic, and look at the resilience, look at how many people are here today kind of enjoying and reestablishing connections. We do have global conflicts, travel restrictions, certain tensions that we're all kind of known and dealing with. Not all geographies have turned on. We're really happy that Dubai has set this facility up for us and enabled ease of access for so many people. But there's a lot of geographies that don't have that today, right? We still have lockdowns in China. We still have other markets that are not completely open yet. And so, that's kind of dampening the recovery for sure. We have macroeconomic factors, high prices, inflation that we're all dealing with. We have labor shortages in some parts of the world as well. But what we have seen is that the recovery has been much faster despite other variants that come out. So there could be other variants that come out, but if you look at this next data set, you see that we've had dips, right? Generally speaking, we're trending in a very positive direction. Each one of those dips almost can be mapped with a variant that's come out, right? So when Omicron came out, there was a dip, but it didn't go back to nothing. We didn't stop on a dime. So it gives me a lot of confidence that, I think we've figured this out to some extent where, if there is another variant, it may dampen volumes, but it'll only be for a short period of time and then things will turn back up again. So we're much faster in our ability to recover. So that's kind of a quick version of the survey results. I'd like to ask that Frank and Alex join us on stage now, and we can just do a quick reflection of this survey, understand how that might relate to our hotel providers and other constituents in the ecosystem. So Frank, Alex, please.
Thank you, Abdul.
Can
you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Abdul. That was terrific.
Thanks.
You talked earlier about the buzz. You talked about what's happening in Dubai, and it's amazing how travel has recovered. I've been on the road now for about 3 weeks through Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to see so many people in the cities and hotels. Restaurants are buzzing, and it's a fantastic trend. We had a strong finish towards last year as we saw bookings already coming up quite significantly.
Right.
But an even better result was in April. I mean, in April, it was just unbelievable how many bookings came in. It's 112% on the hotel side above 2019.
Right.
And, very interestingly, we see also a little bit of a different trend. Lots of bookings coming direct through booking engine. We see lots of leisure travel as well. We see both categories starting to mix a little bit. We say the leisure travel is improving and increasing. And Alex, it would be great to hear from you, how that has sort of translated for you and your hotels and your customers, and what trends do you see in terms of corporate and leisure travel, how that's evolving? So it would be fantastic to hear from you.
Sure, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to say I agree with your point, Frank, and I'd like to say how fortunate we are to be here in Dubai and how fortunate Jumeirah as a brand is to be born in Dubai and based here with a large number of our hotels here. The Dubai government and Dubai tourism have done just a phenomenal job of navigating through this complex pandemic, and it's resulted in Dubai really being a destination that's been the forefront of travel and tourism overall. With the first quarter seeing hotels here in this destination having the highest occupancies of any other destination around the world, and welcoming nearly 4 million tourists just in the first quarter of 2022. In terms of leisure, I think it's really important to start with actually unpacking that word of pleasure. And the reason why I say that is that when I think of pleasure, because it's business and leisure, the mindset is that actually it's business travelers who are choosing to add leisure onto their trip. Now, actually, as we've seen the trend of the navigation through the pandemic, is actually that wasn't the case. The remote working element that you spoke about, Abdullah, was very much around the ability to actually have a leisure trip first. And although I don't like the word revenge travel, leisure was at the forefront of that first step. And so I think we have to kind of think about it the other way around, is that the first time that consumers had the opportunity to travel, they went with a leisure objective as their first part of the reason for traveling, and then chose to either remote work or add business on. And so throughout 2021 and in the early parts of 2022, we absolutely saw that as the first phase. Leisure travel with the ability to add on remote work or add on a business element. Now, as we kind of come now into Q2 and Q3 of 2022, what we're seeing here in Dubai, as well as in a number of other cities, is actually that's now starting to rebalance again and potentially switch around, where corporate travel is starting to commence, and now the primary objective of trip purpose could now be business, with the ability then to still add on leisure as well.
Yeah, that's a great observation. I mean, we were talking about that, sort of corporate travel is trending 4 or 5 months behind the leisure travel side of the equation. We also talked about that meetings and incentives may be either further out, right, in terms of recovery. But actually, quite interestingly, the meetings and incentive side of that business side of the equation has been going up.
Yeah.
I mean, I was at IHTF. It was very, very busy. I mean, look at the show here. The halls are full. The booths are full. And so I think we see a little bit of a different change in behavior on the go forward, because people start recognizing that this cannot be replaced.
Yes.
Right? So the last time, Alex, you and I were speaking with each other face to face was in November 2019 on the 68th floor of a very nice place. We had dinner together. So
Yes.
two and a half years later, right? I mean, it feels like, to me, that happened just yesterday.
Yes.
So I got deprived for the last 2 years of being out and about and interacting and meeting other people. So I think in that context, the sort of revenge travel kind of side of the equation is obvious, right? So people can't wait to get out again and explore and see new things. And to be honest with you, I think that's a lot driven also by the fact that in the e-commerce space, we all got spoiled. So as we were sitting at home and we're doing online purchases, and I'm an Amazon Prime fan now, because in 2 hours I can get stuff delivered right to my house. So as I experience this for the last 2 years, I want to have the same experience when I go back into the hotels. So in terms of personalization, in terms of getting all these offers, and how do you see that being sort of reflecting into the hotel experience? Did you notice that travelers maybe have become more demanding, and to what extent, how do you respond to that?
There's a number of pieces we could unpack on that theme, Frank. The first point I would touch on actually leads to one of the things that Abdul came up with in the survey, was around the travel researching process. So before our guests actually arrive in our hotels and get to experience the wonderful Jumeirah brand, the researching process has definitely changed. And I think in the run-up to the pandemic, there was, just generally in the industry, this trend to be very much focusing on the researching process focused on a price-led transactional mindset, and consumers really, almost having pride in hunting out the best deal, and price being very much at the forefront of the decision-making factor on not only destination, but also hotel or resort within a destination. What we saw straight away through late 2020 and also in 2021 is that researching activity changed to be very much around information gathering and being well informed and making the right choice. If you're going to take your first trip, that brave step during the pandemic of taking your family on a plane and going to a resort, you wanted to make sure you made the right decision. So the two of the key trends that we saw straight away were the number of calls into our contact center, our customer services center, were significantly higher. The number of engagements with customers to make a decision prior to actually transacting, significantly different. And actually during the pandemic, I and a number of our senior leaders actually spent time in the contact center on calls with customers so that we could be agile in understanding what the questions were being asked and make sure that we could inform our overall team. But also the engagement through our digital experience was very different as well. So rather than necessarily dropping onto the website, going straight into the booking funnel, the experience of customers actually exploring the content right across the site and the information that's available. So definitely pre-trip, some changes happening, and a large amount of customers either choosing to go down the route of engaging directly with a brand, through booking engine, contact center, etc., or very much using a trusted travel professional. Now, within the resort, we saw also changes as well. The focus on actually having a very rich and full experience, and so the planning process of making sure not only just booking the hotel, but making sure that when you're in the destination within the resort, you've got as many of the different elements planned out as possible. During the pandemic, or just before the pandemic and throughout the pandemic, Jumeirah launched a number of digital platforms to be able to help the guest experience. One of them being eButler, which is a way for our guests to engage with our service staff through WhatsApp or WeChat through an interactive chat function. And the engagement on that platform was just phenomenal, absolutely stored. But also we launched a platform called eConcierge, which allow our customers to actually plan their overall experience within the resort, as well as in the broader city. And so engagement through digital platforms to make sure that the overall service experience and the experience within the destination is as rich as possible.
Yeah, that's you picked up on something here. I want to ask Abdul. You sort of were referring to the trusted traveler experience, right? And I can make a recommendation. If you ever want to relocate, don't do it during a pandemic, because last year I relocated to the United States, and the research that I had to undergo to find out, can I even enter? How do I have to enter? What documents do I need? It's been really, really complicated. And I'm so lucky that I'm working in a travel organization, so my trusted travel advisors who are helping me out and helping me to navigate, of course, the journey. And it was, at the end of the day, it worked all out, and it was fine, but it was difficult. So in an agency scenario, for example, we've seen a real increase in having leisure travelers now consulting agencies.
Yes.
To that regard. Can you make some comments around that, Abdul?
Yeah. I mean, actually, I just similar to that comment, or I think I'd like to think about the world from a kind of pre-pandemic and post-pandemic phase, and what was the structure of our agency customer base pre-pandemic, and what does it look like post-pandemic? Pre-pandemic, when scale was kind of the ultimate outcome, we had, just from our own customer base, maybe our top 50 accounts accounted for 50% of the total volume. And then this really kind of small to medium-sized agency group, again, getting closer and closer to the end traveler, was about another 50%. But when you look at that kind of anatomy over time prior to 2019, what ended up happening was all the growth, again, because of scale, was captured by those top 50 accounts. And so when we entered into the pandemic, one of the thoughts was that a lot of these small and medium agencies would actually have a very difficult time to navigate through the pandemic. That's actually proved to be false. And prior to the pandemic, we had kind of a 7 to 8% negative CAGR growth on a relative basis for those smaller to medium agencies. And post-pandemic, they've actually been owning a lot of the growth. And what's interesting about that is I think it ties directly into what you're saying. These are kind of smaller agencies, but have very deep connections with their customers and have been able to thrive in this environment on a relative basis.
Very, very, very good. And maybe I have one more follow-up question for you, because you were referring about experiences and customers look at maybe bookings and packages in a different way. The survey results were sort of talking about the differences, how airlines and agencies may see that evolve.
Yeah.
And can you talk about that a little bit? It's sort of how the packaging business, you think,
Yeah,
might
I mean,
evolve over time and what we'll
well,
see?
I think we're at nascent stages for packaging with the airlines. That's something that they're definitely looking at improving their capabilities on, right? So you know, we hear this buzzword about NDC, but eventually it's around being able to give an offer with a dynamic offer, a dynamic package, and that's the tech that the airlines are looking to develop for themselves. And as you know, Sabre's working very diligently in providing that tech to them. But agencies have been pulling packages together for 30 years now, right? So it's something
Yeah.
that they're very capable and focused on doing. And so we've seen that that's been a major driver for them, is to provide this end-to-end solution because of the challenges with navigating which country can I get into, do I need a PCR test, et cetera, et cetera. That's the agency able to provide an end-to-end offering, and I think airlines are working towards getting to that same capability.
So in the context of all these new data points and informations that we're receiving, Alex, in your case, you have so much data that you have to think about. How do you think technology and data sort of plays a role for you going forward in the decision making? Because as historical data sort of is really a bit off, right? So how do you think about, what do you and your team do to compensate for that, and how a technology company like us can assist you?
There's definitely complications here. There's no question that there's complications here. The word that comes to mind, Frank, is very much about agility. And if you think back to the central pillar of our business around forecasting demand, pricing, being able to optimize revenue, is very much, or was very much, based on historical data.
Yeah.
And that when that historical data is less valid, it becomes very much a challenge. But I think the other complexity that comes over the over this as an element is the customer expectation is absolutely moving towards greater personalization and hyper-personalization. But at the same time, all of us as consumers, are now very mindful and thoughtful about what information we're prepared to share with organizations. And so I think we're in an interesting pinnacle point in travel industry around how do we deliver personalization to the consumer and actually exceed their expectations throughout the entire travel journey, including post-travel, in a way where we can do that by collecting the appropriate amount of information. And I think that organizations in the technology space have a leading role to help hospitality brands and travel brands at large be able to navigate through that complexity.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think we are in the center. Sabre is in the center of the ecosystem of travel and hospitality, and we certainly see data points only increasing. Our partnership with Google, we started about 2 years ago. It's a 10-year partnership where we use the expertise of other subject matter experts to infuse technology, machine learning, and AI into our programs and our data set, so that we can provide and offer a more richer experience and make it easier, of course, for you as a hotelier to execute, right? So in the past, the hotel business has been a little bit of a laggard in adopting new technologies, and many of the processes and procedures have quite been manually and not automated. So we think a lot about how can we automate, probably some of those business processes. How can we make the user interface simpler and easier? How can we have data to be more interpreted when you look at the data set, right? So how can it become more actionable? How can you make it speak to you rather than needing another 10 analysts to find out where you want to go, right? So we invest a lot in that area, and the cloud transformation, really has helped us with this exercise. We've been utilizing the pandemic to really refresh our technology stack. We're completing for the hospitality business this month our cloud lift. And basically what that enables us is to take advantage of the native platform and system scalability, security, and everything that comes with it. So we're really super excited to be able to provide you and your dear colleagues in the industry globally a better set of information. So in that context, when you think about technology and maybe in the context of integrations. Do you feel that we technology provider have room for improvement? Do you feel that there are things that you may want us to do better, like more open integrations or more broader distribution? So to that extent, what are your thoughts?
Frank, I would say the starting point, I think, for all of us as an industry at this point in time is about identifying what data is important and what data we need to collect and how do we structure that data.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about earlier around trip purpose and leisure and all this kind of stuff. We've always, I suppose, built the legacy of the travel business based on some very traditional data sets, you know, geographic source market of our customers, business market segmentation, maybe a little bit about customer persona and trip purpose, but we've just already spoken about this afternoon around all those things are melting together now. And so, you know, being able to say, okay, what are the multiple levels of a customer's purpose for travel, and how do we understand what those levels are? It's almost like peeling back the onion to be able to identify, okay, what's at the heart of the reason for actually engaging in travel at the start, but what are all the other factors that are around that? And then when it comes to building data, how do we actually collect those insights? The other element that I would speak to is that technology companies tend to, in my experience, and Sabre I think I've worked with for a long time as a client, focus on getting the customer to the point of engaging with the brand. And the way I see it is that organizations like Sabre and other travel companies, they have the tiniest tip of the iceberg when it comes to the detail around the customer. When a customer stays in a hotel and is engaged in our properties, there's tens of thousands of other pieces of information of the puzzle. You know, why they chose a hotel, what are their dining preferences, you know, all these kind of things. And so the travel industry is very much, I think, dealing with the tip of the iceberg, and actually what's below the surface is huge.
I think that's a great segue, because the huge opportunity Shopify defines, you know, the sort of the extra travel related space or e-commerce space, you know, in terms of $6 trillion, $5 trillion this year, $6 trillion next year. And wouldn't it be nice if you as a hotelier could tap into that marketplace? That would be terrific, wouldn't it? So we at Sabre, we've been sort of conceptualizing intelligent retailing, right? As you just said, like there's so many things out there and there's so much information out there, and how the data brings it all together. And the concept of intelligent retailing is really around enabling the hotelier to tap into a marketplace that currently is defined by a customer to be in the hotel, right? So only then you can really sell. So we've been really so it was a little bit of a trick question, because I wanted to let you know that we've been really heavily investing into our technology to basically enable hoteliers to think beyond the guest room, right? Like, so yes, we are accommodation providers, but at the end of the day, we have so much to sell. And wouldn't it be nice if we can transfer that into an online retailing environment for then the consumer not only to consume during the stay, but also before the stay and after the stay. So in this concept of intelligent retailing, we're building a platform and an environment that allows you to basically sell anything. We call it the anything store. And it's like an environment where you develop packages on the fly that be then distributed, and through machine learning and data inputs, then being presented to the consumer and to the customer. And we do feel that the center of the universe in terms of intelligence is changing a little bit. We see also the convergence of, you know, we call it sort of on-premise fulfillment and experiences being dramatically changing in the way how we engage and interact with customers. We just made an announcement this week. We acquired a company called Nuvola. And Nuvola is all around, you know, helping to make communication with customer a breeze, to ensure that, you know, the operational side of the hotel business is being very well taken care of, to automate processes, to make that interaction seamless, to have a a set of reporting behind it, right? Because we also struggled, right, during the pandemic to meet all these new requirements and demands around cleaning procedures, around servicing customers, providing information. And I feel that this interaction is probably best suited to be on demand and on the fly and nicely in an app for customers to experience. So in the context of appification or this communication with customers, do you utilize today systems like that already? And would you welcome a system like that to help you with these
Feels like Fran's trying to sell me something here. Yes, we do. But what really resonated with what you said there, Frank, is actually coming back to the customer being at the heart of everything at the end of the day. And as much as I wear the title of Chief Commercial Officer, it'd be very easy for me to think about intelligent retailing and dynamic bundling and packaging as being a commercial strategy for our organization, but it's actually bigger than that. It's about creating value for our customers and the convenience of having the right thing served at the right time that adds to only enrich the overall guest experience. And I think the guest experience enrichment is at the tip of the spear when it comes to this topic, and the commercial benefits are actually a secondary benefit.
So as we sort of reflect on our conversation, as we sort of look back about the things that we discussed on pleasure, on revenge travel, maybe the infusion of technology as to how can that help. We talked a lot about personalization. What do you think, which ones of those probably resonates with you the most? Or which ones of those trends do you think have the most meaningful impact that we should remind ourselves about every day as hoteliers? What are your thoughts?
I think it's actually an easy one for a luxury hotelier to talk about personalization and experience development. And every luxury hotel brand, I think, would also agree with me, is that for us to continue to be innovative and continue to differentiate, we have to have service and experience at the heart of everything we do, and it's a core pillar for Jumeirah. We haven't this morning had a chance to talk about dining and food and beverage, but for us, that's one of our most important pillars of the brand, because we feel that it's the opportunity for our guests to really connect over a shared dining experience, and over the pandemic, and actually even as recently as the last sort of 12 months, we here in Dubai have launched 13 new dining concepts as a way to really make sure that we've got personalized, differentiated experience as one of the core pillars of the guest stay.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we can see it coming through in RevPARs and ADRs of hotels, that there is this insatiable demand to do additional things, and when you do them, because you have been deprived for such a long period of time, you tend to indulge, and you don't mind to indulge. You go the extra mile. So I think we can proudly look forward to a terrific 2022. If you ask me personally, I do believe that we will see travel only to continue to grow. I think that our hoteliers around the world can look with excitement towards 23 and 24 as the market recovers. And I could have not been more happy to sit with you, and of course you, Abdul, here today to talk about our surveys and about the new norm of travel. So thank you for taking the time to be with us, and it's terrific to see you. Thank you, Abdul, and I wish you a great finish of the ATM show.